Every single time, like a kick in the guts.
I'd run off and I'd cry.
Here comes Yo, the father.
When kids in the village would sing that in front of Dad.
Se soy yo.
Oi, sorry. You get so angry.
Yo,
Yeah.
sorry, son, walk like a man.
Our sister would catch us wearing your stuff.
But I thought I looked pretty.
At dances in the village, I'd want to put on that doing a headdress.
Then, the whole village would stare. People would laugh. The light went dark, and I felt nothing. But I'd go to the mountain.
And dance by the waterfall.
Being free was a beautiful thing. If I leave, I'll take my roots with me. A piece of home to carry.
In my blood.
Hold on tight.
As I shift in the wind, I'll land and plant these pieces, and I'll grow. Walk like a man, yo. That's what Dad used to yell. Nah. I reckon I'll walk just like me.
Sao malosi ilelalolangi Ai wangalo ya tea uole sili sili ese olelangi E uina o savali ile pongisa Ai salofa mai oia Ole
Hi folks, have you slummed it without new marketplace content? Well, find the decor for your latest project, whether it is seasonally urban or a blast from the past with vintage interiors or modern and chic. Don't forget to save hours of programming time with this interaction starter pack. Grab them all on the Unreal Engine Marketplace. We'll be at Annecy International Animation Film Festival this year, so be sure to stop by the Epic Games booth and check out our panels to learn and expand your animation know-how. Meet some like-minded people in the industry and walk away with the knowledge that can make you a better animator. More information can be found on the feed. Moving over to this week's Community Spotlights. Introducing Indie Fan Choice winner at the Game Development World Championship 2022, Lifespace Traveler, an action-packed, easy-to-learn, hard-to-master cyberpunk game where reality is split into dimensions. No hand-holding, no mercy. Fight your way and test your reflexes in a fast-paced, brutal combat as you reveal mysteries of an unforgiving dystopian world. Wishlist on Steam. Marketplace creator Kevin Rossili's latest creations directed them to make this fantastic world-building short film depicting this dystopian fruit market. Fly to the forums to watch in full and learn more about their works. Set in post-apocalyptic Britain, Once a home and safe shelter to many, Willowcrest Cottage has been abandoned for several years. 3D environment artist Daniel Tolland drew from film and video game inspirations to enhance the visual narrative he wished to tell and build suspense and atmosphere in this intriguing piece. Sit down for a cup of tea over on their art station. Thanks for watching this week's news and Community Spotlight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina, and today with me I have a slew of incredible guests who are going to be going over a lot of really good information about animation fundamentals, tools that you can utilize in the engine as well as in UEFN, and so much more. So there's so much that we're going to get into today. But before we do any of that, I want to start off by going around and we'll have each of our guests introduce themselves so you get to know who these incredible people are. So, Greg, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, I'm Greg. I'm the product owner for Sequencer and IK retargeting in Unreal Engine. And I've been at Epic for almost 3 years. And before that, I used to do a lot of pipeline technical direction work for real-time cinematics in games and also in film. So looking forward to sharing my knowledge with you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time. And then next we have Chase. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Chase. I'm the product owner for Control Rig and Rigging in Unreal. I've been at Epic for about 4 years now, and I started out a few years ago at Epic as a rigger on the Fortnite dev team. Before Epic, I spent about a decade and a half building digital creatures for movies at Industrial Light and Magic.
Awesome. So looking forward to seeing what all you have brought today. Next, we have Samuel, or Sam, as I like to call you. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm an evangelist and content developer at Epic Games, which means I talk about Unreal and also make stuff for Unreal. And prior to that, I was a professional game developer in about every field you can do that in for about 28 years. These days, I'm doing a lot with UEFN. That's what I'm playing with.
Awesome. Just have a little bit of experience in everything, no big deal.
Teensy bit.
Yeah. And then last but certainly not least, we have Josh. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, hey, I'm Josh. I'm a creator evangelist on the Fortnite and UEFN side of things. I've been at Epic for 2 years, and I'm looking forward to talking about animation and how that relates to UEFN.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Very excited to get into it today. So, for anyone who is not aware by the title or the middle card, whichever direction it is that we have here, today we are going to be kicking off our next Unreal Challenge, which is going to be focusing around animation fundamentals. So, for anyone who hasn't been around for any of the challenges before, we like to do these every once in a while where we basically focus in on a specific part of development and really give an opportunity for people to dive in, learn more about it, experiment, and at the same time, potentially earn prizes along the way. So, this one is, of course, centered around animation, everything fun in animation. We'll be announcing the theme that's going to be going along with this one shortly. But there's going to be prizes. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff going along with it. At the end of the stream, I'll actually be walking through what the rules and prizes are a little more in depth. So if you're interested in learning more about those, make sure you stick around. We'll go and hit those at the very end there. And if you want to learn a little bit more, we also have some links that we'll be able to provide in chat here where you can go learn about the challenge itself, really get to know everything in depth and all of that good stuff. So I want to be able to get into the content today that we brought for all of you. So before we do that, something that you can mull over and kind of keep in mind is the theme for the challenge is Furious Elegance, which is awesome. Two words you don't expect to see next to each other. Lots of different ways that you can interpret that theme. So go ahead, take a moment, really let it sink in, mull it over, and yeah, then we'll go into like I said, more of the rules and prizes at the very end here as a little bit of a sneak peek of some of those. We've done something a little different this time around. Instead of just accepting submissions from UE itself, we are also opening up and accepting submissions that are in UEFN itself. So if there's been an opportunity where you've been wanting to dive into UEFN and you haven't been sure about how to get in there or what to start with, maybe use this challenge as an opportunity to do so, to really dive in, get familiar with how that all works and what you can do with exploring in there. So check it out. And again, as a quick sneak peek for some of the prizes, first place winners will be getting $1,000 cash prize, as well as a bunch of other really cool things that we'll go over later as well. So all that aside, let's go ahead and get into what we've brought for you today. We want to really dive into some good animation fundamentals, tips and tricks, and all that good stuff. So, Greg, I believe you brought some stuff for us today that we're going to dive into.
Yeah. So when I heard about the challenge, I was kind of inspired, and I tried to fit with the Furious Elegance a little bit, but I decided to just spend some time to just quickly make something in a UEFN, and everything that I'm going to show today also can work within UE, and be really super excited to show you how I did it as well. So.
Awesome. Very excited to dive in and see what you've brought. I know I got a bit of a sneak peek and I am very excited to watch this process go all the way through. So I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Yeah, let's do it. Alrighty, so I am in UEFN, and I've just submitted like a local project to the island. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run over this trigger device, and it's going to activate what's called a cinematic sequence device that will play a level sequence. So let's just go over that. This mech firing off some bullets. And we have this lovely mannequin riding this pig with some bullets flying around and a camera shake. And that's pretty much it. I try to put this super quick, and what I'm gonna go over now is go over how I got the mannequin to ride the pig with the camera following and kind of some camera shakes in here. So let me end this game and quit out the client. So for those of you who don't know, this is UEFN. If you're familiar with UE, it'll be very similar. And just to reiterate, everything that I'm going to show off today, you can also do within UE. So I'm just doing it within UEFN because I thought it would be kind of neat to show that off and show off UEFN's capabilities.
Definitely.
So in here, I have a project that I've got what's called the Animation 101 template. And you can download this as well if you wanted to. So if you go in their file, open or new/open project, you'll get a dialog like this. And then if you go under feature examples, you can install the Animation 101 project as a template. And what this will do is this will not only give you kind of the basics of animation and its devices within UEFN, but you also get some really nice goodies, including a Fortnite mannequin and a Fortnite control rig. I'll go over what those mean in just a second, but I really want to emphasize that the Animation 101 project is a super neat template project. And if you're just starting to get into animation within UEFN, I would highly recommend starting with this project specifically. Uh, in that demo you saw, I had like this mech here. And this is coming from our control rig sample packs on our marketplace. So what I did was I went to the marketplace, and this is free, and so is the pig as well in our permanently free collection. What I did was I brought I downloaded this from the marketplace and brought it over from a UE project, and then migrated that over to UEFN. I did have to do some material tweaks here and there, just so that way the island could upload, but it's nothing too difficult, just to like delete some material functions that are currently disallowed. But super easy to just get free content and just bring it directly into your UEFN project. Now, going back into UEFN, I'm not going to go over the mech too much, but let's go over how I did that mannequin riding the pig, and have the camera follow with some camera shakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, New Level, and I'm just going to create a blank level. Let it do its thing. All right, cool. And before I do anything, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually save the level. The reason being is that within UEFN, you need to save the level before you start, dragging stuff in, especially if you're going to animate within Sequencer. So I'm just going to quickly save my level. And I know I am testing the waters with doing a live demo throughout all of this, but I thought it would be much more valuable for all of you to kind of see and go through the process as well. So fingers crossed nothing bad happens, but yeah, I know I'm playing with fiery waters. So we're
Living
gonna save
dangerous for
that.
sure.
Exactly. So I'm gonna make that level called live demo, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the mannequin folder, and if you have the Animation 101 template project, this will be provided for you for free. So this is available for any UEFN user, and if I go into the mannequin under meshes, we'll see that I have a skeletal mesh that I can use and a control rig that I can use. And I'll go over that in just a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this mannequin into the level. And hey, look at that. We have a kind of Fortnite stylized mannequin in here. So if you want to animate the character, there's a lot of different ways you can do it within UEFN, but the way that I'm going to do it is with Sequencer. So Sequencer is the cinematic authoring tool that we provide for UE and UEFN, and that can handle not only cinematic authoring, but also character animation authoring as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my top level folder, and under sequences, I'm just going to create a level sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and just right click, and under cinematics, I can create a level sequence. And I'm just going to label this ls underscore for level sequence. And we're going to say this is just a live demo. You'll see me save often. That's just a habit of mine. If I recommend, if you're new to UE or UEFN, you're constantly saving just in case if there's any possible issues with the editor. We'll go ahead and double click, and that will open our sequencer. And what I can do is I can select my mannequin, and I can, from the outliner, drag it to this kind of empty area in the sequencer and release, and I'll get my tracks here. Another way that you can do that is if I select that again and do plus track after the sequencer, and the top, your selected actor will be the top option here. So now I have my tracks, and it automatically comes with a transform and an animation track. And something to know, something else that you get for free with the Animation 101 template is you actually get some free animation. So if I do the plus animation and I kind of look at some of these, I can, do like a fun little, dab there, or, any of these like other animations just specifically for the Fortnite mannequin. And I could even, add some more down the line if I wanted to. So I highly recommend taking a look at these if you wanna just start playing with some animations. But we're not going to dive in too deeply on this part. What we're going to do is we're actually just going to remove the animation track. So I'm going to select and just hit delete. And what we're going to do is we're going to animate with a control rig. So under this plus track here, I can go under control rig. And I have a couple of options. The first one that you might be familiar with is called FK Control Rig. I've seen some UEFN and UE users use FK Control Rig, and that's completely fine because this is a procedural rig that will work for any skeletal mesh. So if you bring him in from the marketplace or bring him in online or anywhere, you can always use FK Control Rig and just start immediately animating and posing your character. So I created that, and I can just select, any bone, and I can just start doing some simple posing, right? And that will create a control for every bone in your skeletal mesh. So it's super simple to just like quickly slap something on there, but it's not really great for posing, partially because it's creating a control on every bone. But it does allow you to have a controller for every, skeletal mesh that you would bring in. But um, but instead, what we're going to do for the FM mannequin is we are going to put the custom control rig that is already provided with the Animation 101 template and use that. So I would go plus track, control rig, asset-based control rig, and then use the FM mannequin control rig. And then we see that we get a nice set of controls that we can start manipulating the character with. Something I want to reiterate is that this control rig works for any skeletal meshes that share or that have similar skeleton hierarchies to this one. So if you're kind of creating a character from scratch, or you're bringing in some from something, you might want to see if you can just like maybe rename some of your bones possibly in another application, and see how this like control rig can just be slapped on, because that'll work for anything that's compatible with the skeleton. I'm going to go in and I can start posing if I wanted to. So if I move this up and down, you can see, hey, look, I'm getting some nice bouncy behavior where the legs are, sticking onto the ground, and I can use my body control to start, start doing some like, I don't know, jumping jack animations or something like that. I'm going to hit Control G to reset that control back to 0. And gonna play with some of these feet controls. So you can see that even though the feet weren't following the body, I can move these leg controls or this foot control, and we can see we get some behavior known as IK. So I'm not going to go into the specifics of IK or inverse kinematics, but basically, for those of you that aren't aware, that's basically having the end of the chain drive the entire limb. So we're having the foot, right, manipulating the entire leg chain right here. However, for what we're going to do is we actually want to have the mannequin attached to the pig, right? We want him to ride. We want him to ride the pig. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have these controls actually follow the body control, and like we want to make sure that as I'm moving this, right, both of these controllers will actually follow the body. And this is where something called spaces would come in. So when you're animating control rigs, you automatically get this left side handle called animation mode. And if you ever lose this, you can always go to the top and change back into animation mode. And there's all sorts of tools that we can use here. I'm going to only go over a few of them today, but we'll have documentation links, I think, in the chat to show off any of these. But what I'm going to look at specifically is this spaces tab here. So let me just select the foot control for a second, and you'll see that I have a couple of options here. And what spaces means is that we're telling this control to follow whatever its parent is supposed to be. So right now we're set to the default parent, and you can see that right now, like there is no default parent. I can, move this around and such, right? But if I, try to move this body, right, it's not going to control that foot control there. So if I select that foot control and set that to the space to be, hey, I want you to follow the body now. I can just click this, and you'll notice that it actually creates a keyframe at frame 0. So you want to make sure that when you are doing any sort of space switching or anything like that, you're at the correct time that you're manipulating. But that's where these keys are going to be set. And since I've changed that to the body control, now when I move the body, you can see that that foot is following that body control, which is exactly what we want if we're going to have the mannequin follow ride the pig, right? So I'm going to hit Control G again to zero that out on the body, and I'm just going to do it the same on this other foot here. So once again, heading that right foot control and saying control the body, and I move that around, we can see, hey, we get that behavior, which is awesome. Now, if I were to try to move this forward because the pig is going to be running forward, right? We're going to see an interesting behavior where I'm going to move this, and you can see if you look specifically at the knees, you can see that my legs start to actually twist and bend backwards. That's because these controls are known as the pull vector controls, are controlling where the direction of the knees are being pointed. So I can do the same thing where I hit Control G again to reset. I can do the same thing again where I'm saying, okay, let's have you follow the body control and do that for the right and the left. So now when I move this controller around, my knees don't bend backwards, everything's following perfectly, and I now can just attach this control to my pig as it's running. Now we have all of that set up on the rig. Let's bring in the pig. Let me just collapse this and go back to my content browser. Once again, before I do that, I'm gonna save just in case of any issues. And I'm gonna go into the animal variety pack. And by the way, I got this from the permanently free collection. So similar to the mech, I had brought it over to UE and then migrated it over to UEFN. So from the pig, I'm gonna go into meshes and just bring this pig into the level. And I'm just going to do the same thing again, where I'm just going to bring that pig down to my sequence. So actor the sequencer, SK pig, and I have my pig in my sequencer. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at some animations that I can use for the pig. And I know that I want the pig to run forward. So I'll go ahead and say plus animation, and I'm going to see if there's any run animations that I already have. So I have a couple that I see. I don't know what underscore RM is just yet. We'll go over that in a second. But let me just use this pig run animation here. And perfect, sweet. As I'm scrubbing, you can see that, okay, cool, that pig is running, which is awesome. But if we take a look at the skeleton, which if we just on the animation track, you can right click, edit section, and say show skeleton, we can see that all the bones are being animated, but it's not moving forward. It's animating in place, which is not what we want. You really want them to move a bit forward. And that's because we want, obviously, just keep on riding forward and keep going. And partially that's because there is no motion on the bone, on the root bone here. So you can see that that root bone is still. Now, in this case, this is how the animations were authored. It's not always the case for every animation. Some animations may have the motion on the hips, and some animations might have some other things kind of going involved. But in this example specifically, the motion would just be on the root bone. But let me see if I can find something else that will have the pig move forward. So I'm just going to delete that animation clip here. Oh, cool. And I'm going to look for a run again. And I'm going to try that RM animation here. And I'm just going to scrub. And oh, it's moving forward. That's cool. Let me just check out the skeleton just to see what that looks like. And we could see, oh, okay, the root bone is actually moving. So RM in this case stands for root motion. So we can see that this pig is moving forward, and that's great. And now I am going to just extend that and see if I can make that pig move forward further. So I could try and do that by just extending this, but we can see that in sequencer that we have these like tick marks that are appearing, and you might not know why that is, but as soon as you scrub, you can see that instead of the pig constantly moving forward, we're actually replaying the same one over and over again, and that's what kind of these tick mean. It's like this is the end, and then this is the end of the next one, etc. So, and this is not what we want. We want to be able to have the pig at the end of the clip, right, to continue moving forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to undo by hitting Control Z, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this clip by hitting Control C. And at frame 16, which is where this clip ends, I'm just going to paste. It's going to make another track row, but I can just bring this up. And you can see that my skeleton is being drawn. You can even see that that's one. And then you can see that the second one is being drawn here. But what I'm going to do is, with this second clip selected at frame 16, I'm just going to right click on this, and I'm going to look at some of my motion blending options. So specifically, I'm going to use match with this bone in previous clip. And basically what that's going to do is at the end of the first clip, or at the start of the second clip, what I'm going to do is I'm going to match it to the end of the first clip. So since it's just a root that's being moved, I can just hit the root bone on here. And as I scrub, you can see that it stops there and then it continues on. So, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. For those of you that might be familiar with these options, they also work for non-root bones. So if you wanted to like match like foot plants and stuff, if you're familiar with any motion editing software, that's super useful, especially if you're like kit bashing a bunch of animations together. So what I'm going to do is I want this to even go further and further. And instead of having to constantly, paste and, click on my options, what I can just do is I can just select this second one. I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to scrub to where that ends. Control V. It's going to create another track row, but we can fix that in just a second. Control V and Control V here. And I can just select all of these and just move them up one. And we could see that that pig is now constantly moving because those options were copied over. So I don't have to constantly redo them. I can just copy, paste, and we have those same options over and over again. Now, as you can see, when the animation is done, right, the pig goes back to its initial spot. So let's not do that. Let's hit with my arrow keys, I can go frame by frame, and then let's hit my right bracket to mark the end of the sequence. So that way, when I play it back, it will just loop. So hit the up arrow to go back to the beginning, and we can see that, okay, cool, it's looping, and it just stops right there, which is perfect. Now we have our pig animated, and all we need to do is attach the mannequin to the pig. So what I'll do before any of that is I will just collapse some of these tracks, and I'll just move my mannequin just a little bit over, just so that way I have a clear view and kind of position it right. And then what I'm going to do is with my control rig on the body control, I'm just going to kind of do the same thing with spaces where I'm going to just attach this body control to the pig's hip. So if you remember with the foot controls and the pull vector controls or the knee controls, I had said, hey, follow the body. So I'm going to do that same concept, but instead of using controls, or instead of using spaces, I'm going to use something called a constraint. And if you're familiar with constraints in any other, software or animation packages, they work pretty much the same in UE. However, there is some neat little tricks that you can do. So with my timeline or with my playhead at the first frame, and with my body control selected, I'm just going to hit this plus, and I have some options here. And basically, what constraints are is it's a relationship. So you're saying, hey, this control, I want you to follow this other actor or bone or other control only on either like the translation or the rotation or the scale or maybe all three, or even just aim towards it or look at it. So, and that's what all of these options do. So here I'm going to use parent. Parent will do both translation, rotate, or all three, translation, rotation, and scale. So I can go ahead and hit parent. And you'll see that you'll see that my eyedropper tool comes up in the viewport, and I'm just going to select the pig. And I'm going to say, hey, follow the pelvis. And you'll see that nothing really happens in the viewport besides the manipulator being put. Something to call out is that the keyframe was added in sequencer. And also in this constraints area, now I have highlighted this like blue with this pig pelvis with the parent constraint icon. And if I were to just scrub, we can see that the mannequin is following the pig. So, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Now we want to go ahead and pose and start, manipulating this and making sure that, okay, cool, like, it's in a correct pose that we want. So with this, we have something called dynamic constraint. So right now, since I am on the first frame and I have auto key on, I can move this body control just over, here, something like that. And it's going to maintain that and it's going to key that because auto key is on. And now I can move that. You can see that I've dynamically just updated my constraint. I've dynamically updated that offset, so I don't have to recreate anything. I can just do it on the fly at whatever time that I've set the constraint to be. So now I've gotten the hips in a pretty good state. What I'm going to do is on the foot control, which if you recall, I already have keys on there because of the space switch. I can move this and it will just auto key it for me. So I'm just going to move this out a little bit. I think I have to go into the pull vector, which on the anim outliner, I can just select it on here and just move that out. I might turn off the skeleton drawing on the pig just so that way I'm not I don't have to I don't have as much visual clutter. So let me just do that really quickly. Turn it off. Okay, so go back. All right, cool. I got my leg pose kind of right. I could tweak this all day, but I don't think y'all want to see me tweak a bunch of very minor controls. So I'm just gonna do
I
this
do.
kind of quickly. Yeah, you do. Yeah, so let's do that and move that pull vector control and that across. So now we kind of get that nice sitting position. We might want to bend this a bit. Same on this side over here, and which is perfect. So I got that. And let's say I wanted to, do that kind of like rock pose that I had in that demonstration. So let me select the arm, which, by the way, I forgot to mention. In Sequencer, you can actually filter your controls. So if you filter by selected control rig controls, you can just have like a simple timeline instead of having to constantly scroll. But if I go ahead and just select that arm, I'll twist this a bit and move this up a bit. I'll key that. I'm hitting S to key, so I can key this. Since elbow, we can't bend the elbows backwards. We want to make sure that's just on the arm. So we have that, and I'm gonna animate that wrist, and now I can go in and pose my fingers if I wanted to. Which, by the way, if you want to, you can multi-select this across, and then just rotate all of these together. But I don't really want to do that. That will take a while with all of these fingers, and it'll just be a bit too much to deal with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called my pose library. So here there's something called poses. And if I select that, I already have created a previous pose library or a pose for my little like rock side. So if I just select this asset, I can, I think by default key is off, but if I just say select controls, it's going to select all of my finger controls. So that way I don't have to do any other selection. And I'm going to hit key and say paste. So you can see that it automatically put all the fingers in that pose, and I don't have to think about this anymore. If I wanted to create another one, I could. So if I right click, or not right click, create pose here, I could create a new pose if I wanted to. So this is an easy way to store a bunch of quick poses if you want. And this works for any control rig controls. So if you have like, certain body controls that you want and you just want to save those as poses, you absolutely can. And that's a quick and easy way to reuse animation. Well,
That's awesome.
go ahead and save that. And yeah, it's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
A lot of our internal animation teams have a very large pose
Oh, I
library
bet.
for our control rigs. Yeah. So I'm gonna rotate that arm, and I could work on the spine, but this is getting a little long, so we can just play this back and see how this looks. And yeah, look at that. We have Manny riding the pig. Which is perfect.
Fantastic.
So
Love.
yeah. Oh, well, now let's one before we end off, let's go over some camera stuff because I know a lot of UEFN folks have been playing with a lot of camera stuff with the cinematic sequence device. So if you don't know how to create a camera, there is this little camera icon here, and it's going to create a camera cuts track. So camera cuts is if you had like multiple cameras and you wanted to space them out and kind of see how they look, you can add more more to the cuts track. But since we only have one camera, this will be perfect. And what I'm going to do is I want this camera to follow the pig. So let me just kind of position it to kind of where I would want it to be. Maybe something like this medium shot will work. And what I'll do is I'll select the camera and I'm just going to do a constraint. So like before, like how how we attach the mannequin to the pig, I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to say, hey, give me a translation constraint. So I don't want to keep the rotations of anything, right? Because if it's going to rotate, it's going to be really shaky, really awkward. I just want it to follow the pig, right? So I'm just going to make a simple translation constraint. Going to select the pig, and yeah, we'll do the root bone since we know the root is constantly moving forward anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And if I scrub back, you can see, hey, look, I have that simple relationship, and this is working quite well. And I get my pig, I get my camera following my pig, which is great. If you are a UEFN user and you want to upload this to your island, I would highly recommend baking out your constraints before you submit your island. So if you go into any of your constraints, you can right click and just say bake. And that'll automatically put keys on all of your entire sequence. So now this camera actor no longer has that constraint active, and these are the keys that are baked. So I'm going to do that on the camera. I'll do that on the body control as well. So I selected the body, right click, bake, and we have all of that, which is perfect. So now, before we end off, and just to finalize this demo, and fingers crossed on this one, I'm going to add a camera shake. So you saw in my little demonstration earlier that when the bullets constantly were going down, you got like a bit of a camera shake, which is a super nice effect if you want kind of like this like big shaky stompy effect, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and save, and we're going to create a camera shake. So bear with me, this is a little more complicated just because it requires creating a blueprint. So I'm going to go back to my content browser. I'm going to go up to sequences, and I'm just going to right click and say blueprint class. And that's going to come up with some options. By default, you might have this collapsed, but you just have to expand this, and you can say camera shake base. So I'm going to say that, select that, and I'm just going to call the CS for camera shake. Oh, whoops. I don't know why that did that, but say CS, and maybe we want a camera shake every time the pig lands, right? So I'm just going to say pig land, CS pig land, and I'm going to go ahead and save and open that up by double clicking on that. And we're just going to add a simple pattern. So we have some patterns to choose from, and I'm just going to do a wave oscillator one just to show for this demo, but I highly recommend looking at some of these other ones and kind of playing around with what might work. But I'm going to do this wave oscillator one. I'm going to compile. Ooh, ooh. Ooh, okay. All right. If you don't mind, I'll get this back up and running, and we can show that last bit off.
Yeah.
Just give me a second.
Game development is hard.
Yeah. It's inevitable.
Yes.
We have to have a crash every once in a while.
It was going
UFN
so
is
good.
still in beta.
Yes, UEFN is still in beta.
And we all crash all the time. Everyone it's very common.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh,
I feel like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, pretty much most people in chat are relating right now. This is.
If you've ever had to show your
sure.
software on a laptop to a person at a conference and then it won't run
Yeah.
for no reason, you've been there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why you save often, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
This was actually intentional to show the
It
power of
was.
saving.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greg's
This is
demonstrating the
pre-planned.
autosave system and how the saving tools work really well.
Exactly.
Glad we're all on the
Oh.
same page here.
All right, I think I'm back up and running. Yep, I'm back up and running. So let's go back to the camera cut. There we go. Perfect. All right, so I think we were going to the blueprint, which didn't save that thing. But if we go back and change that to the wave oscillator, compile, hey, see, it's fine, right? Everything's fine. We'll go ahead and save, and we can start playing with some of these values to, change the amplitude and the frequency on even on a per channel basis if you wanted to. But for this purpose, I'm just going to only focus on the location amplitude and the location frequency. So I'm going to keep this window up just off to the side, and back in my sequencer, I can add a track and camera shake, and I'm just gonna say, yeah, give me that pigland shake. And if I hit control and scroll wheel, I'm gonna zoom out, and this section's a little bit big because of how much time that can be, but I'm just gonna shrink this down to about there and kind of time when my pig lands. So let's say there. So I'm gonna move this over, and we could kind of see that shake kind of already happening a little bit. But if I were to, go hit the up arrow to go back to the beginning and hit play, we kind of don't see the shake as much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it a bit larger. So maybe I do the amplitude of 4 at a frequency of 4 and compile and save. Okay. And go back to the beginning and let's see how that looks. Ooh, there we go.
There we go.
Maybe not the perfect shake, but at least something,
Heavy
right?
pig.
So
Glorious.
You feel it,
big
yeah.
pigs. Yeah, yeah. So I can once again, just shrink that time down and copy and paste, and have multiple shakes going if I wanted to. So every time the pig lands, so maybe I want that just a tad, just like a frame earlier, it looks like. And I can go back up and that big shake, shake again, and yeah, there we go. So we did that in what, like 30 minutes, something like that. So we were able to put something together super quick with just some free assets and put all of that, and yeah, pretty nice and simple. So Furious Elegance, right? Furious Elegance.
There we go.
Furious
That's
elegance at
amazing.
its peak.
So great.
I feel like I
Awesome.
learned many things.
Yes.
Yes. I want to make
Yeah,
a
there
pig
were a
riding
few
game
things in
now.
there. Yeah. Yeah, there were a few things in there that were absolutely killer. I know a few things that stuck out to chat in particular was the poses part. That is such a time saver in and of itself.
Yes.
So thank you so much for showing that because I know that's going to save quite a few people a little bit of a headache. That's a really great one to put in your back pocket. And then I think
Yeah,
the
of
other
course.
one was near the beginning when you actually got the pig to move instead of just loop in place. That whole segment was really useful as well. That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
great.
and something that I forgot to mention that I couldn't fit into the demo was with control rigs you can actually bake, like if you have like a bunch of animations together, like a bunch of animation clips, you can actually do a bake to control rig, and then it will put all of your animations as like key data onto your control rig, and that way you can do some like tweaking and do some other stuff, right? Maybe like your foot plan is just a bit off, and maybe you want to do some blending on the clip side and then down to a control rig. It's sequencer and control rig and animating in the engine is super, super powerful, and you get some really nice results pretty quickly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for walking through that. There were so many good tips, especially for anyone who maybe hasn't really had a chance to experiment around in UEFN. Hopefully, y'all opened it up and followed along as best as you could, and you learned a lot from that. I know I did. So
Now, look forward to seeing
awesome.
what everyone creates.
Me too. I hope there's more pigs involved. We should name it at
Yeah.
this point. I feel emotionally attached. So
Wilbur, right? We could say that.
Wilbur.
Wilbur.
Wilbur grew up,
official.
and
It's
now Wilbur
Wilbur.
is furious.
Furious.
Mascot. The
Furious
mascot of
Wilbur.
Furious Elegance.
Yes, yes. Awesome. All right. Well, next, I think, Chase, you had some stuff that you wanted to walk through with us as well, right?
I do. see if Dan, can you load up the video for us? I'm going to talk about rigging in UEFN and control rig. So Greg went over a lot of the sequencer part, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of a deep dive into how do you rig in UEFN? How do you use control rig? So right now, this is inside UEFN in the Dragon from the Forest Guardian example that was released at the UEFN launch. So this guy was completely rigged and hand animated with control rig all in UEFN. It was animated by our Frederick Nielsen at Epic, a gloriously talented animator. Yeah, it's amazing. So what is control rig? And why would you want to use it in UEFN? So control rig is Unreal's rigging framework, and it'll let you build real-time animation rigs in UEFN. So it can drive traditional keyframed animations, such as this dragon. Right, so I'm just kind of moving around the head directly in the experience. You can see I can just kind of yank it, really breaking his wonderful animation here. And so like right in the editor, I can just zoom in and start tweaking his pose. Let's move his jaw a little bit. So I'm just kind of playing with the rig some, right in the experience. You can see how it's all live. It's all the keys are down at the bottom. All right, so let's jump into the control rig editor. So on the left, you have all your controls. In the middle, we have the viewport, and on the right, we have our control rig graph. On the far right, details and any other windows and tools you want to dock. I'm going to arrange the editor just to be a little more friendly here. All right, so in the control rig editor, you can manipulate the rig the same way as you can in the level editor and with sequencer. So that's a great advantage because when you're building a rig like this, you want to see what the animator sees so you can get real-time feedback right on the fly. And I'm going to go turn on the control overlay. So we'll see a bunch of stuff showed up. And now I have some controls hidden in the Dragon. These are always there, but the control overlay will force view all the controls on top of your model so you can see everything. Sometimes you might want this on, sometimes you might not. It can sometimes add some clutter into the view, but for this guy, it's really letting me shape the shape of the dragon. I'm just pulling these dots around, and as I do, the rig is kind of more of a flying pose. It's kind of what we want. It's a little more like that, yeah. So you can see how it's a little cluttered. So I'm going to go turn off the overlay because sometimes it's a bit easier to see. So that's a lot better for the face. If you notice that the whiskers are moving, we have some really cool harmonics nodes in control rig. And these have dynamics on them. So when you're animating him, you kind of get all this motion for free. You don't have to spend all this time trying to get the whiskers just right. You can really just focus on the main pose of the character. And as you move around the head, the whiskers will follow dynamically. And instead, it brings a little more life to the character and not be so static. So I'm going to go over here on this settings node. Let's close up some of the details panels so it's a little easier to read. And I'm going to turn on the dynamics mode option for the rig. And this new control pops up. And when you start wiggling it around, the entire rig will start following this control. So anywhere I move this control, the rest of the rig will somewhat kind of lag behind, but it gives us really fluid motion. This is pretty hard motion to create when you're keyframing animation. It can take a long time. And right here, this is where control rig is extremely powerful. There's a lot of tools inside control rig that this is just a more organic motion to add into your rigs and your animation. And so on top of that, you can pose your character. And I want to note that this rig specifically is all procedural. You don't have to build your rigs procedurally, but this entire rig is generated procedural. So it's real easy to just pose up my character, and then I can just kind of yank him around like this. So it's fun. It's this really creates like a really nice motion. And this was a challenge for the animators on the project, was how to, we had to do it fairly quick. And it was like, how do you get this type of motion fast? So I'm just going to compile. The top, that kind of resets all the rig and runs all the graphs again. All right, give it a second. All right, cool. So I was talking a minute ago about the graph and being procedural. We have a few graphs in control rig: the construction, the forward solve, and the backward solve. I'm just going to touch on these a little bit. We're not going to deep dive. We have many resources on if you really want to dive into this large rig. This is a very large rig and is for specific needs. But if I unhook my construction graph here, you'll see all the controls disappear. They don't exist yet. If I hook it back, all the controls, hundreds and hundreds of controls, and the entire hierarchy assembles itself nearly instantly. So this is something that Control Rig is extremely good at. The rig VM underneath Control Rig powers it, and it's mostly a bytecode. So it's very, very fast to construct rig elements, and you run all the procedural functions that happen inside of it. So what I thought would be a good idea is to show like how did we do that? Like, you know, in a simpler example. So you as a creator or in your animation challenge can also do the same thing. It's actually a very simple technique, fairly simple. This is actually the whole graph. And all of this I'm going to release after this talk on the Epic community, Epic dev community. And this graph, so everyone can recreate it. So I've created a bone chain here, just going along Y, and one control. Right. So when I grab this one control and wiggle it around, we get the same type of effect that we're getting on the dragon. Right. So you get really neat motion and do like crazy stuff that I mean, you can definitely hand key this type of motion, but it's going to take a while, you know, and you're probably not really wanting to spend all the time messing with that, right? Yeah, weird. So this could be used for ropes or snakes, or probably throw this on a character. How I've set up this procedural little forward solve is that it'll work on any bones you give it. Okay, and so the key to this whole little rig is the spring interp node. So this basically takes any position, like a bone or a control, and it will jiggle it. In layman's terms, it'll just basically add a little jiggle to it. And so at the parent constraint, we have a whole constraint system inside Control Rig, just like Greg showed in the sequencer view. And I'm using a parent constraint, and I'm plugging each bone into the spring interpolate node. And as I pull around this top node that's just constraining the top root, it's jiggling. All right, so that'll be released. I'll release that as more specifically after this. Okay, so next example. I thought it'd be great to show a slightly different way to utilize this system. So this is StackoBot from our really great StackoBot example, and such a cute character. He's great. I want to add them to this experience. So let's create a control rig. So to create a control rig, you right-click, hit Create Control Rig, right? And so we get a bot. And let's rename him. Let's give him something a little nicer. Rig_bot. We want to be clean in our naming so we can stay a bit organized and find stuff later. All right, that's all you have to do. We now have a control rig. Let's pop into the control rig editor. Let's go ahead and compile to get rid of that warning. All right, so we have our stack of bones to the left and no controls. And we have a clean, empty graph. All right. So the first thing you always want to do on a rig is create a root control. I do this every time I make a rig, just right-click root control. And then I'm going to use Shift-P to unparent it from the bone hierarchy. You want to keep your controls and bones separate. And let's create another control. Do the same thing on the head, Shift-P, pop it out. And then let's drag it underneath the root control. So now the head control is a child of the root. Right? And I'm going to set offset transform. What that does is that zeroes the control. That basically sets the rest state because you want your controls to stay where you created them. So I'll do that a few more times. You'll get to see that a couple more times and understand what that does. This control is a bit hard to select. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn it into a circle. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and I'm going to scale it up. I just want that control to be a bit easier to get to. All right, so let's compile. So now we have a circle for the head, and it's a bit easier to get to. So let's jump into the graph. You right-click, and you can type in constraint or parent. And we're going to use the same type of parent constraint that Greg showed off earlier in Control Rig. And we're going to hook up our root to the root control. So we'll plug in root as a child, plug in our root control to the parent. A very similar workflow to the level editor and sequencer. All right, and so now we have rigged a character. Very, very simple rig, but this character, maybe this is all you need. Maybe it's a prop. This is a rig, and this will work just as everything else I've shown. And so we're going to go a little bit further here. We need to connect the head. So same process, grab my head bone, plop it into the child input. We're going to grab the head control and plop it into the parent input. And with a couple clicks, we have our head moving around. And in theory, you could go drag this in and you're ready to animate. You could start giving this guy a little bit of life. All right. So let's spend a bit more time, and why don't we add some nice secondary motion onto these antenna. I don't know if I want to animate these all by hand, so I'm going to create some dynamics to help with that. So let's create two controls on top of the antenna. All right, so same process, Shift P, pop them out. All right, down here, I'm just going to parent them under the root control. All right, let's close up our skeleton a little bit, just so it's a bit easier to see. And here we go, set, offset, transform. You'll see all of our values to the right get zeroed. So now we've set the rest state of our controls. All right, so now instead of a parent constraint, we're going to use an aim constraint. Same concept, except you're going to aim something at one of our controls. So we're going to grab our root bone of one of the antenna, the left antenna. Let's plug that into the child. And for the parent input, we're going to plug in the left control. Okay, so I'm saying, hey, bone, aim at this control. So now when I yank this control around, the bone chain is now moving. So now we have a little rig to animate the antenna around. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop both controls under the head control because I want these controls to move with the head. All right, so now I can animate the head and I can animate these little antenna controls. But that's not all. We're going to do a little bit more, and we're going to use the spring interp node to help us animate this for us because we don't want to animate this all the time. So I'm going to type in spring interp, and you'll notice that I'll need to resolve this. We need to make sure that we can plug in the translation. So I'm going to tell it to be a vector, make that little yellow input on the target. Then I'm going to drag and drop and do a get bone. I just dragged this bone into my graph, and we want to make sure to grab the translation. We're going to plug it into the target. All right. And so you don't have to change any settings on this node to get a result. And so I'm going to drag in my control, and I'm going to set control. We're actually going to have this jiggle spring drive the control, just so we have some visual feedback. All right, just hook up the yellow connectors together. And then let's connect our graph. Okay, so now, pretty cool. We have our control kind of lagging as we animate the head. All right, let's rehook up our aim constraint. All right, now we have a little rig for our antenna, and you can just animate the head around and those get animated for us. All right, but we have to rig the other side. Oh no. Well, what you can do is you can Control-C copy this entire graph, Control-V over here, and then we're going to run a fun little tool. You right click and search and replace mirror. So we basically want to say, hey, all of these names, let's swap it over to the right side. So underscore left for search, underscore right for replace. Hit OK. Let's see. Looks like everything transferred pretty good, except for this guy. For some reason, that guy didn't change. Let's just plug him up really quick. All right. So let's see what happens. Let's plug it in. All right. And we animate the head. Great. We're done. We have both the antenna moving for us, and we have the head. This guy, I think, is ready to go. You can definitely keep decking him out. You could do the arms in the same manner. You could do legs. We have IK solvers. I'm not going to get into that in this video, as Greg also mentioned. We have plenty of resources that can walk you through any of those kind of setups. All right, so I want to add this guy into our Forest Guardian experience here. I don't know. I think it would be kind of fun. So all you gotta do is drag and drop, and we now have our rig. Yeah, Stackobot into our Forest Guardian guy. I don't know. He's let's maybe make him. I don't know. He's wandered into this cave and he doesn't know what he's about to see. And when he does, he doesn't like it. He really doesn't want to be there. And we've all experienced that. We've played this experience. You don't want to fight this guy. He's going to be tough. The Stackobot has the same thing. So I'm just going to start setting some keys and animating him. So I think he's going to just evaluate the situation, and then he's going to change his mind. He's not up for this. He doesn't think he can win. So I'm just setting some poses here. Grab root. Yeah, and around in here, we're going to have him turn and run towards the camera. All right. Yeah. Not dealing with this. Nope, this dragon's way too big. Let's get out of here. All right. Let's maybe have him zoom back. Let's go have him translate over here. He's a robot. He can float over water. That's totally fine. Let's just try that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Makes
buy
sense.
All right. So let's go back to our correct sequence. Hop in here. I'm doing a lot of magical clicking. It's okay. Just want to get to the final result. All right, let's see. We have our Stackobot down there. He's framed pretty good. We have our dragon roaring. All right, I think this is the right frame. This feels pretty good. So let's go ahead and activate the animation. All right. Let's see. Make sure it feels right. Yeah, it feels pretty good. All right, so I'm just going to toggle this mute. Sometimes that kicks the animation into gear. There we go. All right, let's see what this looks like with the animation playing and everything. Rewind a bit to play. Yep, he's out of there. He's not going to deal with it. All right, so now we have our bot. Let's break the fourth wall a bit. Let's just have him acknowledge that we're here at the camera. He'll just kind of say hi. We'll wiggle his little antenna around. But he just, he has a life. He has a little bit of life. Hey, camera, how you doing? All right, let's play again. Let's see what that does. Yeah, this feels good. All right. So now, yeah, so I thought this was a great example of how I can just very quickly go from nothing, no motion, static model, all the way through rigging and bringing your rig into an experience and just kit bashing some ideas together. Now I've enhanced this. Granted, this is a very expansive, experience that was created, but you can definitely start from scratch and you can just really quickly, kit bash stuff together in animation, just like you can with models in Unreal. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's
Thank you so
Wow.
much. That was adorable. I too always acknowledge the camera when running for my life, so I relate to the
That's how
robot.
we do it in
Nice.
Metaverse.
Little stack bot, yeah. That was awesome. Thank you so much for walking us through that as well.
Yeah.
That is an incredible amount of secondary animation made so easily that you don't even have to worry about. Just does all the work for you. So thank you so much for walking through that. That's another incredible time saver.
Definitely. And there's going to be an article on the Epic developer community walking through everything I just showed. So you people can go and just grab that logic and hopefully make other cool stuff. They want to get up and running with a very simple example.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm so excited to see what everybody puts together, and especially with some of these tips and tricks behind them, I think sky's the limit. We're going to get some really, really cool stuff from this.
If we don't get Stackobot riding a pig now, I'm going to be really disappointed.
That is the logical next step.
That
Greg,
is.
you know your mission now. You got to do it.
Yeah, gotta create that new UEFN experience, right?
Yeah.
Big riding
it's worth-
simulator.
It's worth mentioning if you are using Stackobot comes with the Stackobot project comes with a whole bunch of animation that you could grab and use potentially in an animated sequence alongside, Control Rig and IK to create something very cool. More kit bashing.
Yeah.
More kit bashing.
Yes. Can't get enough of it. It's so helpful. So awesome. Well, I believe Sam and Josh, you had a couple things that you wanted to talk about from the UEFN perspective of things as well, right? I was wondering if you wanted to kind of dive into some of those topics.
Yeah, I'll start.
Go for it.
Yeah, I wanted to call out, like, on top of everything you've seen here today, Sequencer has a ton more applications. We've seen some really awesome stuff come from the community and from internal people too. Using Sequencer as more than just creating cinematics, creating linear content right in front of you, moving platforms for parkour and, moving cars right in the game. So there's a ton of stuff you can do with it if you hop in and explore. So I really recommend checking it out. Like I've seen people create custom vehicles, custom third-person cameras using Verse combined with Sequencer. So there's tons to explore, tons to dive into, so many possibilities for this challenge.
Absolutely. And it's, just from a general game and experience development perspective, Sequencer is a really nice way to put together content that's playable, because even if you're animating something in Sequencer, it doesn't lose its properties. So if you're using a device or an item or an actor and you're moving it around, it doesn't mean it loses its collision. Still jump on the moving platforms. You can still destroy things that are destructible.
Yeah.
So you can create pretty deep, interesting gameplay that is networked across the internet for free through the cinematic sequence device. So you can create really cool multiplayer experiences with Sequencer and a cinematic sequence device as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Which is nothing to scoff at, especially the
It's
the
pretty
multiplayer
awesome.
experience part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, if y'all are up for it, I can go into some of the rules and stipulations of the challenge a little bit more. We can also go over some of the prizing a little bit further in depth. I know that's something that everyone's excited to hear about, understandably. So yeah, I guess to start off, from everything that you've gathered through the stream today. Of course, the challenge is centered around animation and the theme of furious elegance, which you are open to interpret however you see fit. And there's a few stipulations around the submission itself. So the submission will be a video, of course. Makes sense for the context of this one. Some of the requirements for that video. um, First, you have 4 weeks for this challenge. So it's not quite the same as our game jams where you have a single week of no sleep, no eating, just dev constantly. You have a little bit more time with this one. You have 4 weeks to put something together. For the submission itself, it would need to be posted in the Unreal Challenge forum category by the deadline, which is July 6th at 7 p.m. ET. Make sure you take note of that. It is not at midnight, as I believe our first couple challenges were, just to save a little bit of time for our poor our poor judges and everyone who's looking in, so that they're not having to stay up until the wee hours of the morning. So just do please take note that it closes at 7 p.m. ET so that you don't accidentally miss that submission line by just a few hours. It's the worst feeling ever. So please take note of that. The submission itself must be between 20 to 90 seconds long with a minimum resolution of 1920 by 1080. 30 or 60 frames per second is preferred. Others are welcome for creative exploration, but these might not be able to be used in a potential winner or honorable mention sizzle. It also needs to be created using Unreal Engine or UEFN without any post-production software or tools outside of those permitted as outlined in the official rules. Which, if you go to the main blog post, you'll be able to get the rules really laid out in full detail. So I recommend taking a moment to go through all of that to make sure you know absolutely everything you need to. And then last but certainly not least, make sure you fully credit any pre-made assets that you use or anything that you use as part of your entry. It's totally fine to use everything that's available to you. We are not expecting you to hand make all of your assets and everything like that. Please use resources that are available to you. Just make sure that you credit where credit is due as you do so. There's a couple submission criteria that will differ for UEFN entries as well as the student submissions. So make sure you really take a second to read through and know that you make sure you know everything that applies for your particular category that you're interested in going into. I see John S. asking about duration requirement. It is between 20 and 90 seconds long is the requirement for duration there. Now, for submitting an entry, you do so by creating a new discussion in the Unreal Challenge category or in the UEFN submissions and use the tag Furious Elegance Contest. Include a title for your video, link to your video, obviously, otherwise we can't see it. Also, make sure it's viewable. We've had a couple submissions in the past where through just permissions and things like that, we haven't actually been able to see submissions. So make sure you take a second to double check that it is viewable. If need be, try sending it to a friend and see if they can get access to it. And if they can, then so can we. Make sure that you indicate whether or not you are currently a student, because for this challenge, we do have separate pricing for student and non-student categories. So if you are a student and you're brand new to all of this, don't worry. We're not going to immediately pit you up against professionals. You do have a chance to really explore and potentially win some prizes by going into it, but make sure that you list which category it is that you are applying for while doing so. Make sure you include which engine version you have used to create your project, as well as attach a screenshot of your project in Editor, whether that's in UE or UEFN. All of that aside, we've got lots more information that you can get into about Unreal Editor for Fortnite specifically, as well as some great sources for getting started, lots of learning material, reading material. We also go through the sponsors if you're interested in learning more about them. I do also want to take a second to mention our judges that we have for this challenge. We have some really incredible judges who will be going over the submissions for this. First, we have Haz Dalul, who is a director. He's actually been on the channel before, talked about some of his movie projects. They're incredible. We have Nyal Hendry, who is a VP of Partnerships, Heather Storm, who is our Creator Evangelist Manager here at Epic, as well as Enoch Burgos, Director of Partnership Marketing at Reillusion, Carol Madrigal, who is the Senior Motion Capture Editor and Animator, Jim Geduldik, who's Director, Virtual Production, and SVP Dimension Studio, as well as Koina Freeman, who is a Technical Artist specializing in XR and virtual production. So lots of incredible judges who are going to be going over submissions, and they have some really great feedback. So really, really cool people who are involved this time. Super glad to have their time and attention going through all of this. And then last but certainly not least, I know the thing that lots of people are interested in, of course, is the prizing. So we'll dive into that as well. So first place is consistent across all categories. This includes the base Unreal Engine prizes, the UE student prizes, as well as the UEFN prizes. So you get a cash prize of $1,000, as well as one iClone 8 software license from Reillusion, one 12-month license to the Move app platform, which is up to 6 hours of mocap from Move AI, as well as 1 year ArtStation Pro from ArtStation, providing ArtStation prize criteria is met. You get one Epic Games / Unreal Engine merchandise of our choice. You get one featured highlight on the official Unreal Engine blog, one featured highlight on the official creator portal, and one feature in the forum of the Unreal Challenge Furious Elegance Sizzle Reel. I also had one slight misstep there. It's 1,000 cash prize for the main categories, and it's $500 cash prize for student. Then the prizes are pretty consistent through the rest of the placements, except for the cash prize is lowered based off of second and third place. Another thing to keep note of is we also are including community recognition awards. Now, these is where we're going to be trialing, where you get to vote on any eligible entry, and whichever one is voted highest by the community. So all of you who are involved are also up for some prizes as well, even if they didn't necessarily land first, second, or third. And that includes $250 in marketplace credits, featured highlight on the official Unreal Engine blog, featured highlight on the official creator portal, as well as feature in the form of the Unreal Challenge Furious Elegance Sizzle Reel. So lots of really good prizes this time as well. So much stuff. So much stuff, so much time to make cool things. And yeah, that's kind of the main gist of the challenge itself. There's a lot more information that is available about it, but I don't want to bore you by just going through the entire blog. all here. So if you're interested in learning more, make sure that you go check that out for yourself, as well as there's a very in-depth breakdown of the rules that you can find on that blog as well. And as you can see here, we've also posted a ton of learning content for you to go check out. There's a frequently asked questions section. If there's stuff that's come up that you're wanting to know about, make sure you see there first. If your answers have already been pre-selected, it might be available for you there. And yeah, tons of stuff. Go read it, check it out. Lots of things. I'm running out of breath because I've been talking so long nonstop. But that's the main gist of it. If you have questions about the challenge as well, please feel free to post those in chat, and I will do my best to go across and answer some of those, clear up any confusion that might have come up. So make sure to toss those in chat as well if you have some. But oh my god, okay,
You got
that
this. You
aside.
got this. Get some water.
Yeah. Awesome. So all of that aside, now I would love to dive into Q&A. So this section, of course, we can answer some questions about the challenge itself, clarifying rules and all of that. But mainly, I want to focus on questions that you all have for our incredible guest today about parts of animation process, things that could help you with the challenge itself, really honing in on animation fundamentals and all that good stuff. So if you have any questions in regards to anything that was demonstrated today, or just in relation to the subject of the challenge, make sure you post those, and we'll try our best to kind of get through those. So, are y'all ready for some rapid fire questions your way?
Let's do it.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Let's get in here. All right. So first up, Fractured Fantasy was wondering, what's the best practice when deciding which bone to match to? They've seen some other tutorials where someone has chosen the foot, things like that, for example. So what is your opinion on that?
I would say it really depends on your motion. So if you're trying to maintain a specific contact point, so like let's say your character is landing on the ground, right? And like with hands first, like it's maintaining that contact in the hands first, and then it's like, maybe doing some sort of like parkour move from the hands. Obviously, then you would probably want to match on whatever hand bone that you have, most likely your like wrist, either right or left, if you're kind of dealing with bipeds. If you're dealing with like quadrupeds and stuff, right, like I mean it's just whatever paw that you kind of decide. All that matching does, right, is it tries to get you really close to what your desired result is. You might eventually have to bake it down to a control rig or something like that to do like further tweaking, right? Because maybe the blending isn't just right. Maybe it's like, one of the legs is too fast. Even though like everything looks fine, it's just maybe that back foot is not like lifting correctly or something like that. So you might then want to just like, oh, let me just quickly bake to a control rig and just tweak that a little bit, tweak the timing a bit of that, using like the curve editor or keyframes just to, shrink that down. But yeah, I would say it really depends. The main part I would just say is just maintaining your ground contacts. In the pig demo, I didn't have to because I just knew it cycled, and it was just the route that I cared about in terms of the distance, so I just matched it to the route. But if you had like other stuff, like you're blending from like a walk to a run, right, and you only have a walk animation and a run animation, you would then want to time it to be like, okay, on the left foot plant, or right when the left foot is about to plant, I'm going to, blend the clip, right, and match it specifically at that time so that way it can, go off and speed through. So hope that answers it. I know that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but yeah, it just really depends on what motions you're kind of dealing with.
Awesome. Yeah, no worries. I think long answers are good. Really in-depth answers are what we're looking for, especially for anyone who might be a beginner. So thank you so much for that.
Of
Next
course.
question. Sorry, their username is so good, especially considering some of the content of today. But next question is from the Pork Chop Express. It was wondering, they've run into issues with the technique of moving the character where the character flashes back to the start of the previous clip for one frame. Is that something you've run into? Do you have any workarounds for that? The only thing that they've found to kind of fix that themselves has been to bake to control rig so far.
Yeah, so something that we'll be working on eventually is in the matching, it's based off of the playhead. So when you match, it's based right at where you time it. So if you are timing it kind of in the middle, right, you might have some sort of weird jump occasionally just because like, oh, it's not matching at where I would expect it to, either like the start or the end, but it's matching at where your playhead is. So that's why when I was doing the pick, right, it's like, oh, I'm specifically looking at the end of the clip or whatever the end or start of the clip, right, and matching it there. If I was blending, I would make the contact like exactly where I would blend. So I would just be careful about when you're handling your matching, is all, or when
Awesome.
you're handling your matching. That is.
Sure. Awesome. Next question is from Lorand Kielman, and they're wondering in a full body IK, how do you get the IK goal's rotation to affect the whole chain down to the root?
In a full body IK, I'm guessing you're handling it within control rig. There is a so they want it on the full chain. Was that what they said? Sorry, I was like processing the question.
Ye-
Wow. Yeah, they want
yeah,
it on the
no
whole chain.
worries.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, wait, am I thinking of something else? Goals don't goals for a full body IK. The rotation for the goals only would affect the kind of the end chain, doesn't affect the full rotation. You can, if you're doing this within control rig, you can kind of slap a full body IK and do that, but then you can have some post process after the full body IK or even before to do like full kind of chain rotation, and if you wanted to. The only reason why that doesn't do that is it's a bit computationally heavy, and also it would be a bit hard to define per user, right? So if you have to like really particularly work with that. But on the full body IK node specifically, you do have some constraints. So you can set preferred angles. You can also set limits of rotation, and that should get you further along as well. But you can always, after the process of full body IK in a control rig, just add more if you wanted to.
Awesome. Next question is from FaithFlex, and they were wondering, does it create a camera object when you add a camera to the sequencer?
Yes. So in UEFN, that will create a possessable camera that will be added to the level. In UE, it will create a spawnable camera. So basically, that means it's just a temporary actor as long as the sequence is alive. And yeah, when you hit the camera icon, it'll create a camera cut and camera actor, and from there you can start animating the camera. I didn't go into it too much, but you can do all sorts of things like animating the focal length, field of view, a bunch of like focus distance as well. I didn't need to play with that because the camera's following the pig, but if I wanted to, right, I could have animated the focus, which is super useful for a lot of different UEFN experiences and also for cinematics.
Awesome. Next question is for you, Chase, actually. It's from Harold
Okay.
Sweat, and they're wondering if you can talk about using control rig in conjunction with the deformer graph. They've seen a bit of documentation on it, but not many use cases.
Sure. Yeah. So right now, the former graph is experimental only in vanilla Unreal. And yeah, you can use it in conjunction. We actually have a feature called animation attributes that lets you essentially pipe controls into deformer graph. You can create unique things like lattices and stuff like that. So yeah, that's our way to travel data between the two systems is animation attributes. So if you're interested, you could go. There's definitely some. I think it's rough draft. As I said, Deformer Graph's still experimental, so we're just suggesting that you go and play with it. I can't remember off the top of my head if we documented that specifically, but if you go into Control Rig, right click, Animation Attributes, it should pop up and get you started.
Awesome. Very good to know for where to find that as well. Next question we have is from Akira K1337, and they're wondering how would you adjust the path of the pig if they wanted to swerve or making a tight turn?
There's a couple of ways you could do that. From the animations that I had, there was actually turn animations. And what you could do with those specifically is just put those as clips, match it again, and it would just kind of follow along accordingly. So if you have animations that already do that, that could work. You could also, if you just had the run in place, right, you could have attached the pig to animate on a path. So you can, make some sort of splines and then just attach it to the path and then just adjust the speed accordingly. So that could be useful. Another way you could have done it is with Bake to Control Rig, and you have a custom control rig that you work with, and hand key animate it. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. It just really depends on what kind of assets that you have already, and also kind of what your preferred method is, right? For me, I think I would go with the path, or try to do some of the clip blending with what clips I already have, just because I'm not a great hand key animator. I can do it, but I would prefer not to if I had the choice. So, trying to just quickly do something like that. So would be as would be my choice to handle that problem.
Awesome. I don't blame you because handmade animating is so much respect. So much
Very
respect for hand
much,
animators.
very
I
much.
could never. So much time and effort. No way. I could never. Next question is also from Harold Sweat, in regards to the dragon. They're wondering, are the whiskers deformers or are they bones?
They are all bones. And the whiskers are using the same spring and terp node that I showed in the demos. So that's why I wanted to show it, because it's just used all over the place on that guy, and do a lot of cool stuff with it.
That's awesome. Yeah. It can really, I can only imagine all the different use cases for that as well. And it really adds some extra life to the overall animation. So that's really cool. Next question is from Hot Sauce. What kind of hot sauce? We can't just be hot sauce general. We need a brand. No. They're wondering if you're keyframing into sequencer, how would you copy a character's animation into another sequencer? I'm not sure if they're talking about a different project, perhaps, but
Hmm. hmm. So if you're hand keying, so let's just assume that you are hand keying a character, and you have, maybe like 30 frames of animation that you were trying to just copy and paste to another character. Um, Sequencer actually handles a lot of great ways of copying and pasting. You can just select all your keys. I personally, what I do is like I try to like collapse them all and then just copy. And then if you have your destination has the same control rig, let's just say, and you can just paste and it should work on your. I think it'll do it based off of your current time. So let's say you had those 0 to 30, and then you go from like 60 to 90 on the other one, right? And you pasted it at 60, it would go from 60 to 90. So that's an easy way to do it. That works for transform tracks too. That pretty much works for any like property. So if you had like keyframes on like your camera focus distance, you could copy that, paste it onto another camera's focus distance. So as long as your source and your destination are pretty much the same, you should be okay.
awesome. Next question is from it's spelt as PK Min. I definitely read it as Pokemon in my head, but I feel like I can't say that. So anyway, or um, can control rig be used for making aim offsets instead of making individual poses for an aim offset blend space?
See if I understand. Do you understand that one, Greg?
I
Aim.
I'm guessing they're talking about aim offset assets, like the animation
That's what I'm
assets for
thinking.
blends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can author animations with Control Rig and Sequencer, and I didn't go over this in the live stream, but you can like after you've authored your animation, you can right click and bake to an animation sequence and use that to, you know, extract poses for your aim offsets, like you were saying, or any sort of runtime animation. So uh, from that anim sequence, yes, then you can extract poses for like your aim offsets and such. So I hope that answers that. But if there's any clarifications, feel free to ask in chat, and we can clarify if necessary.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
piggybacking on that, if you do the bake to control rig and stuff, and you're baking everything, you want to set up a backwards solve. So if you set up something specific
Yes.
for aiming and control rig, we have lots of documentation on the backwards solve. It's not super scary as it sounds, but that's essentially what you would do also to pipe that in.
Okay, awesome. Good to know. Next question is from Fractured Fantasy. I'll go ahead and take this one. They're wondering about judging criteria for the challenge. So there are 4 different categories of judging criteria. The first is animation itself, of course, which can garner you up to 10 points. This is based off of both the creative and technical aspects of the animation itself. Next is composition, which is worth up to 5 points. Next is conveyance of mood, atmosphere, and or emotion, which is up to 10 points. And last is unique use of contest theme, which is up to 5 points. So those are the main criteria of which all submissions will be judged later. We do not offer what the actual judges' score is later, but just for your viz, that's what the actual criteria is when we go through. Next question about the challenge from Andre about can we submit already existing animations that are live or will be live in a Fortnite island? All non-original content has to be noted in your submission. So as long as you do that, then you're good. Next one about the challenge is what if I'm not a student but a beginner? Which category do you suggest? If you aren't enrolled in higher education or like an accredited course, for example, then you'd either need to submit with Unreal Engine or with UEFN, just in the main categories. You need to be, to qualify for the student category, you have to be enrolled in education or in an accredited course of some kind. All right. Next, also from Andre. This one I cannot answer, so we're back to y'all. How can we export from UEFN animation sequences with multiple cameras?
Is slightly confused with that. Is that like they're trying to render or? I don't know,
Maybe since
Josh
it,
or
it
I think so. From UEFN, you can't export directly, at least to my knowledge. Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah,
Uh,
you can't export directly.
but when
You
you
have to
create the
capture.
sequence and you like play it with the cinematic sequence device, your multiple cameras will all flow smoothly along it. You
Yeah.
can capture that.
Yeah.
You just have to use the camera cuts to make sure it's cutting between them. Should be good to go.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
awesome. Next question is from Fluffle Pimp. Good to have you back, Fluffle. Always good to see you in chat. When working on a character's animation blueprint, what are the best practices for choosing what goes inside the event graph versus what goes inside the animation graph?
I could take a little bit of that. So basically, what you want in the event graph is anything that any logic you can stuff in the event graph is going to be better. There's a little lightning bolt that will show up. You basically want to make sure your animation graph is all lightning bolts everywhere. That'll help you do better performance in that graph. But essentially, yeah, if you stick in any events, any logic, like conditional logic or anything like that, any math. Like the more you can stuff into the event graph, the better. Basically, anything you can stuff in the event graph, do it. That's kind of my rule of thumb. Um,
Yeah, to add a bit upon that, yeah, I completely agree with Chase about the event graph. For the actual anim graph, that's where you would put a lot of like your poses, right? So like your state machines and any sort of blending. So anything that handles your input and output poses based off of whatever anim nodes that you're gonna use. You just want to stay within the anim graph as much as possible for that. You might have to do like a little bit of math depending, right? Like if you're like handling some blending and stuff, but ideally that should just be in like a variable, and then you use the event graph to that for you.
Awesome. Next question is from Alex Gachanja. They're wondering, do you always need a root bone / joint grounded to the origin when creating character animations for games?
That's a good question. No, you do well for games. No, you do not. And it just really depends on what kind of game that you're creating, right? There's some games, right, that require the root bone to be moved because that is going to end up being on the movement component, right? Like the actual capsule that the player can control. Because sometimes it's better for animation to handle that kind of root motion rather than programmers trying to put that together. So they want that kind of movement component being handled by an animator, right? And sometimes that's not the case, right? It's better for the gameplay to be handled via programming and some blending. So just really depends on your scenario. I've seen, and maybe Sam and Chase can speak a bit on. I've seen games do all of the root motion on that root bone, right? For characters, I've seen some that have none and some that have a mix. So it just really depends on your scenario and kind of what your level of expertise are on either side.
It's usually a mix, and yeah, animation driven versus control driven player control is a religious debate in game development.
Yes.
No two game developers will ever agree on what is the exact balance. So
100%.
yeah, it's what works for your game, really.
Yep.
Awesome. Next question is there a way, and if so, how to block the rotation of a bone along 2 axes?
Are we talking? Well, there's a couple ways you could do it. If we're talking about control rig, yes. That's not a straightforward answer. Definitely takes a little bit of graphic magic to do that. I don't know that I could explain that in an elegant way. But yeah, you can do that. You just have control rig. Everything's based on transforms, so you can break everything down into XYZs and rotations and change the type of rotations. I won't say the magic keyword quaternion, and we don't want to go there. It doesn't have to be that complex. You can do all that. You can also do it on the sequencer side with constraints too. There's some tricks you can do.
Yeah.
Greg, I think we added some tech recently to be able to project individual axes. I don't know if that's made it into UEFN yet.
Yeah, access filtering was added to constraints, but only on the scripting side. We're working on getting it to be on the UI side as well. So in that little right-click menu you saw with like the bake and the compensate and all of that with that constraints, like you'll be able to access filter there. But for right now, it's only via scripting. So if you create a constraint via scripting, that's blueprints in Python, you can do some access filtering that way.
Yeah, we do have axes filtering on all the constraints and control rig. So there's another way. There's probably 10 ways to do it. Yeah, you can totally do that in control rig too.
Awesome. I lost my place. Oh no. Okay, we're back. Next question. In regards to the challenge, Bob Bobson, wonderful name, is wondering, do you get extra points for good sound effects and sound design? So I'm going to actually add a little bit more onto this question as well. Thank you so much for asking. So, audio is not a judging criteria. And also, in addition to that, we're also not judging you on your environment or the quality of your assets or props or anything like that. The only thing that is being judged is the animation in this challenge. So, you can utilize as many or as little extra assets as you want. Um, if you want to add in extra sound effects and things like that, please feel free, of course. It especially if this is something that you'd like to use ultimately as like a portfolio piece or something like that, there's no downside to continuing to add more to your project. But just know that the only thing that is being actually judged for this submission is the animation itself. Um, Next question is for you, Josh. They're wondering, why should someone try UEFN for this challenge?
Oh, great. Yeah. I think UEFN, because it's its own category, there's its own sort of situation you got yourself in with all these different tools and um, different assets at your right in front of you to use. So with UEFN, you have the full suite of Fortnite assets you can throw in and work with, and you have the ability to really easily iterate on that, throw yourself in a game, have your animation be focused on like gameplay and cinematics in there, and um, it'll be a cool category with lots of different stuff, and so you're not directly competing with UE and some tools they may have and stuff like that. So it'll be a fun thing to try out. Tons of assets at your disposal to use.
You got Fab too,
And
so
a lot
you
of
know there's
tools
tons
coming
of
over from
Fab
UE.
stuff.
Yep.
Tons of
a
Fab
And
stuff. Free stuff, stuff you can buy.
Use Fab and geometry tools and make yourself some assets. I mean,
Yeah.
why
yeah,
not?
yeah. And after all of that, you can just upload it as an experience, right? And other people can, take a look and also, get involved and enjoy it as well, right?
It
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah,
makes it really
exactly.
easy to share your work with the world. If you want
Mhm.
people to see it, it's the easiest way to get your stuff out there.
Definitely.
Awesome. As kind of a follow-up to that, there's another question and I feel like this is kind of open for any of y'all who wanna jump in for it. But any advice for UE devs wanting to try UEFN for the challenge or even just in general?
I think the main thing to understand is that while it looks like the Unreal editor you're used to, the actual workflow and toolset is quite different. So while Sequencer is very similar, a lot of the tooling around things like Sequencer, the tools that are new that would moved over from Unreal will probably take a little bit of learning. I recommend doing your first hour in UEFN learning course on the Epic
Yeah.
Developer Community by Matthew Watstein. That
100%.
will get you up to speed really fast. Then we have good documentation. Go read about the cinematic sequence device, maybe the animated mesh device as well, if you want just some simple looping animations in the background or whatever. There's a lot of stuff there, but that would get you up to speed pretty quickly, especially if you already know Sequencer. And we have a lot of great sequencer documentation in general.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I did was, and it doesn't work with everything, as I had previously mentioned in one of the demo, and during the demo, is trying to migrate some stuff that you have from like previous UE projects. You can migrate most things over to UEFN. So if you're like, it's like, oh, I want to work with this mesh, or oh, I want to work with this like material, or something like that. Like, and then you can just easily get started. So that way you're like, oh, I'm familiar with this asset. I don't have to think about this anymore, right? I can just focus specifically on the, UEFN side. It's not every asset type. Obviously, something like blueprints and some other stuff will not transfer over as easily, but at least a good starting point, right?
I
Just to
recommend
get you there.
validating your stuff
Yes.
before you put too much work into it, just in case
Yes.
it's not
Try and
upload
launch the
friendly.
session.
Yep.
The
Yep.
the other
Yeah.
thing when you are migrating is if you don't know where to find your content folder, technically your UEFN project is a plugin. So you plugins,
Yes.
game feature plugins. It's the content folder for your project in there. So if you don't know where to look, that's where to look. Because traditionally, you just find your Unreal project content folder. Documentation is about that online too.
Yeah, I'll repeat it again. On the EDC, we have documentation, goes over sequencer, goes over devices, which will be new for UE people, goes over publishing, and then we also have the learning section, which is both Epic made and community made video tutorials. There's great stuff on there. First hour in UEFN. There's great community made tutorials going over verse and sequencer and how to use both of those together in those best ways. And tons of content.
And more to come.
And more to come.
And more to come.
More to come.
It feels almost ominous saying it, but it is true.
It's true. They're nonstop working, making things.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy the amount of work that's being put into the resources that are going to be coming out. I did want to make a note that was kindly brought to my attention by our wonderful Sky, who you are familiar about hearing their beautiful voice in the news and spotlight. But we will have a tutorial on how to screen record your island or experience to showcase it very soon. So that will also be releasing TBD, but very soon. So keep an eye out for that. I mean, like very, very soon. Like I wish I could say today sort
How
of thing,
soon?
but I don't want to put like a specific.
hear it's
very
very soon.
Very, very soon. So yeah, if you're curious on how to go about that as well, we will be releasing a tutorial that you can follow. Which just kind of falls into that whole lots of things coming category, which is why I wanted to bring it up. Another question we've got is from the Merciful Boy, not to be confused with the non-merciful boy. Are people located in Quebec eligible to participate in the challenge? So, yes, you are, which is super exciting because previously, no. But for this one, yes, you can. So please, our
Yay.
devs in Quebec,
Yay.
please join the challenge. We're happy to have
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah, a very, very exciting update on that. Got another question about what is the ArtStation criteria, because I know that was brought up when I was going through the rules and all of that. So the classification for the ArtStation prize criteria is to be eligible to receive the ArtStation sponsored prizing, entrants must also post their submission on ArtStation and add the link to their submission post in the Unreal Challenge forum category. So it's kind of just an extra step from what you're already going to do. Just put it on ArtStation too, basically. Let's see. Next question. Oh my God, there's so many. We'll see how many we can get through before time is up. Next question is from Akira. They're wondering, are there any situations where you recommend to bake versus not baking?
I'm gonna guess that's in relation to baking or not baking control rig. Um, yeah, I mean, I personally, I always like, you working with clips just because it's, much easier. You might have already captured it, outside of UE, or, maybe you captured it inside of UE, and you're just kind of like playing and toying with ideas. I think as soon as you start getting away from like trying to like vision plan or trying to like feel like, oh, this is kind of like how I want my animations to go, or that's how my shot or sequence wants to go, and I want to dive into the nitty gritty details. That's when you would want to start getting into baking and start doing like the minute tweakings and stuff. That's what I would recommend. Think about it as like a larger picture. I'm working with clips. I'm not making anything. I'm just kind of slapping some stuff together, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. Just ideating a bunch before committing to something. Be like, okay, I'm gonna bake down and go into the detail work. That being said, you can always bake and you can always make to a control rig and then, export out clips too if you want to just, it's like, oh, I don't have something that I really need. Okay, let me just make, like do some edits, and it's like, okay, now I have what I need. Okay, I have a clip, make that out, and now I can put it back into my larger picture aspect. So I'd say the greatness about these kind of things is just the flexibility, right? The fact that you can do these things and go from large picture, small detail, large picture, small detail, and constantly go back and forth is super powerful. So
Awesome. Next question is from Proletarian X, and they're kind of wondering about the pros and cons of using full body IK setup in the control rig versus the new IK rig um, that they commonly use for like the retargeting feature and all that.
yeah, I can take that. IK rig right now cannot be used for like animating in sequencer or anything like that. It's used for retargeting. It's used for anim blueprints. So if you wanted to do like you wanted to use IK to additively do something upon like your runtime animations, that's where IK rig is super powerful. And then obviously for retargeting. If you want to author animations with sequencer and control rig, then that's where you would use full body IK. You can still use full body IK for a bunch of other things, such as like slope inside control rig, such as like slope warping. So that's for those that aren't aware, that's like if your feet are on a slope, you can use full body IK to kind of adjust your feet and your hips and your body, so that way your character is not just standing and clipping through the ground, right? Like it's actually being slope warped and aligned to the slope. So control rig is really nice for those fine details, especially if you need per bone data. But yeah, I would say those were the difference in terms of the uses.
Very good to know. All right, I've got a couple more questions for the challenge itself that I'll answer, and then any other questions that anyone might have in regards to the challenge that we didn't get to answer today. Please make sure that you join the discussion on the challenge event page on the forums. We'll post a link to that in just a moment here. And you can post any questions that you have in regards to rules, pricing, all of that there, and we'll make sure that we answer it there if we didn't get a chance to get to it today. But the couple that I will take a second to answer, one was wondering how to create a submission video for a UEFN submission. Like I said, we will be releasing a tutorial that'll go through this in depth, but a kind of short answer is there's feature developments to grant the ability to render exports from UEFN, but right now the best way would be using OBS. And if you're unfamiliar with OBS, again, we'll kind of walk through all of that in that tutorial series that'll be coming soon. Then the next question is, do I need to publish my island for my submission to be eligible? And no, you don't. You do not have to publish your island for it to be eligible for submission. However, we may ask you to publish just so that we can check the eligibility of the entry. You don't have to do this though, unless we specifically reach out to you and request this. And yeah, any other questions that might come up in regards to the challenge specifically, again, feel free to post them on the forum post and we'll get back to you about that. All right. Before we wrap up for the day, I have one last question for each of you. I figured we could kind of go through it one at a time. But that is, what advice do you have for anyone who is interested in participating in this challenge? It's a hard one. I threw a hard one at you right again here.
Don't get hung up on the small stuff. Like if you have a thing that you want to do and it's a whole story, don't spend your entire time just making sure, oh yeah, well they moved their arm perfectly at the beginning. Get the whole thing stood up before you start worrying about all the details. It will, because sometimes the things that you want to do no longer are important.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's just layering your work and blocking. Try to get the whole picture in place. Don't spend all the time on this one. Just as Sam said, like one little thing. It's all about layering and add things as you need it, and block out everything. Get the idea there. The idea and the story is the most important part. So just try not to get too hung up on the technical details. Make it fun. If it's not fun and you're too deep and technical, maybe take a break.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
say
I
be.
would.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you first.
All right, all right. Yeah, I would piggyback a bit with Chase. I'd say like have fun and be curious, right? Like if you're not enjoying this challenge, then like like you should try to make something that you enjoy making and that you like want to get out. Especially even like um since it's just a challenge, right? It's like, oh, you can always work on it, post a challenge too, right? It could be something super interesting that like you've had in your head for a while, and also just like especially with diving into UEFN or even some of the UE animation stuff, right? It's like, yeah, be curious. Like there's a lot of really cool and interesting tools that you may be used to or you may not be, right? And there's a lot of great benefits on why using something like the engine or using Unreal can be super powerful, right? So have fun, be curious.
Yeah. I would say work smarter, not harder. I learned a ton from Chase and Greg today. Just tiny little shortcuts that will save me hours of time doing things. Like those antennas that Chase showed. Like that's awesome. You can get so much life and personality just out of you know a minute of work setting those up. So um, 4 weeks is a great amount of time, but it'll go quickly. So using shortcuts like that to get cool effects is great, and it'll save you a lot of hard work.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you all. That is fantastic advice, all of it. If I were to add anything on there, I would say um, there's 4 weeks, so you have time. So if you need to take breaks and step away occasionally, please do so. And take take care of yourselves. Because I
Yes.
know inevitably,
Drink enough
yes, drink water,
water.
get sleep, eat food. Inevitably, every time we have a challenge or jam, I have people who message me that are like, "Oh, I've been so excited about this. I haven't slept in the past 72 hours." And I'm like, "No, don't do that, actually." Please, actually, please take care of yourselves. And yeah, enjoy the challenge for what it is. It's just here to really have an excuse to experiment with something, play around, and have
Yep.
fun. And potentially meet some cool people, make some cool stuff, all that. Don't get too hung up on it. It's really just for fun, kind of like everyone else was saying. So enjoy your time.
Yeah.
It's a good time. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much, everybody, for coming on today and showing everything that you did and answering all these questions. I really appreciate your time. You are all busy people. So I appreciate genuinely you taking the time to sit with us and the community and going through these really priceless tips and tricks that hopefully they can utilize in their own challenge submission. So thank you. Thank you. Really genuinely appreciate
Of
your time
course.
and you being here.
Anytime.
Yep, definitely.
Awesome. And then for everyone who's watching, thank you for watching and participating and hanging out. And even if you don't participate in the challenge, we appreciate you just being here and being part of the community. But if you are going to participate in the challenge, I hope that you got some inspiration and some ideas and all that from the stream. And keep us updated as you go through and you're working on stuff. Always happy to see the progress and how things are coming along. Um, the show isn't what it is without you. So thank you for being here, participating, and asking
Absolutely.
questions.
Mhm.
If you missed any part of the stream, because there was so much good information, don't worry. We post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand on both our YouTube and Twitch channel. You can also keep up with us, get all the latest news and all that good stuff at all of our socials at Unreal Engine. You can also come to the forums, which please do, where you can meet like-minded developers, get the latest news, find tutorials, all the good stuff is available on our forums and EDC. So if you haven't joined us there yet, please do so, where you can also find all the information for the challenge as well that maybe I didn't get a chance to go over or anything like that. So come hang out, come join us, be part of the crew. We're fun here, I promise. I feel like me having to say that makes it sound like it's not, but I promise it's a good time. So go hang out. All right. Well, with that, I will see all the rest of y'all next week for next week's streams. And yeah, take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.